in front of the haunted house at the carnival. Leila hooked her arm through Raphael's, right in front of our entire class. She said to me, "Caesar, Raphael is too scared to go in. I'll go with him." I nodded and silently stepped back, putting some distance between us. Leila glanced at me in surprise, then pulled Raphael into the haunted house. Watching the two of them disappear inside, I turned around and left. As soon as I got home, a message from Leila popped up. "Caesar, where did you go? Why didn't you wait for me? How many times have I told you not to get jealous over nothing? You're so petty. When we get to college, how am I supposed to tell people you're my boyfriend?" I didn't reply. There was no point. I wasn't her boyfriend anymore anyway. Chapter 1. After the college entrance exams ended, our class monitor organized a trip to the carnival. When Leila and I appeared hand in front of our classmates, waves of surprised exclamations broke out. A few of the guys I was close with came over and teased me. They wanted to know how I had managed to win over Leila, the school's most admired beauty. I just smiled and said nothing. What they didn't know was that I had never pursued Leila. She was the one who pursued me. After entering the carnival, Leila seemed distracted, constantly searching for something. Then she spotted Raphael standing alone outside the crowd. She let go of my hand as if she had been shocked by electricity. Only then did I notice that Raphael was looking at her with a hurt expression. I didn't know much about Raphael. He had transferred into our class during senior year. On his first day, he wore a faded school uniform that had clearly been washed countless times. With his head lowered, he stood awkwardly on the platform, enduring the scrutiny of the entire class. Later, I heard from classmates that his family was poor. His father had been paralyzed in a car accident and was bedridden year-round, while his mother supported the family through a small business. However, he was an excellent student. That was exactly why our prestigious private school had recruited him. Originally, he and I had no connection at all. If Leila's savior complex hadn't kicked in and she hadn't volunteered to become his mentor and support partner, I probably would never have paid attention to him. At first, everything seemed normal. It was nothing more than buying him lunch occasionally or sharing study materials. But later, Leila voluntarily switched seats and became Raphael's desk mate. Every day, they went to the cafeteria together, took walks together, and were practically inseparable. That time, I got furious and told Leila to stay away from him, but she called me narrow-minded. She said she simply admired Raphael for remaining strong and hardworking despite growing up in such difficult circumstances. She said the reason she stayed close to him was to let everyone know that Raphael was under her protection and that nobody should bully him. Looking at the determined expression on Leila's face, I knew I couldn't change her mind. Senior year was already exhausting enough. I didn't want these messy issues affecting my studies. Since she wouldn't listen, I never brought it up again. Now that the college entrance exams were over, I had planned to talk to her properly. I wanted her to keep some distance from Raphael, but when I thought about the way she had let go of my hand and eagerly walked toward him just now, the words died on my lips. I no longer had any desire to say them. Leila walked over to Raphael with a radiant smile. As someone who had grown up with her, I knew that smile all too well. Usually reserved and emotionally distant, she only smiled like that when she was genuinely happy from the bottom of her heart. "Good. At least you listened and didn't run away." Raphael nodded awkwardly. Leila patted him on the shoulder. "Raphael, don't be insecure. You're not inferior to anyone. You should participate more actively in group activities." Raphael glanced at me before extending his fist toward Leila. "Leila, I want to give you a gift." The corners of Leila's lips lifted. "What does that mean? Are you trying to make me guess what it is?" Raphael shook his head and opened his hand. A flashy, gaudy ring lay quietly in his palm. I took one look and recognized it as a cheap trinket worth only a few dollars from a street stall. I thought Leila would dislike it. Instead, she was thrilled. "It's so beautiful." As she spoke, she stretched out her right hand and said playfully, "Put it on for me." Raphael hesitated for a moment before slipping the ring onto her ring finger. Leila pressed her fingers together and happily admired the ring on her ring finger. She paid no attention at all to the whispers and comments from the surrounding classmates. Seeing that scene, it felt as though an invisible hand had clenched my heart, sending waves of pain through me. 2 years ago, on her birthday, I had also given her a ring. She had refused it. Back then, she held me in her arms and stretched out her right hand toward me. "Caesar, it's not the right time yet, but don't worry. The place on my ring finger will always be reserved for you." She knew exactly what it meant to wear a ring on the ring finger. Yet now, she had accepted someone else's ring, so happily, so naturally. Soon everyone lined up to enjoy the attractions. Leila and Raphael walked side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Even though they weren't holding hands and showed no obvious intimacy, it felt as though no one else could fit into the space between them anymore. I followed behind them the entire time. Like a form of self-inflicted torture, I watched them together. It wasn't because I enjoyed the feeling. It was because I knew that only by doing this could my heart die faster. Chapter 2. When we arrived at the haunted house. Raphael tugged lightly on Leila's sleeve. Leila, I don't think I'll go in. You know me, I'm a coward. Leila looked at him with affectionate indulgence. Don't be scared, I'll go with you. Raphael cautiously glanced at me. But Caesar is your boyfriend. You should be with him. The hesitation in his voice was perfectly timed. Anyone hearing it would have felt sympathy for him. As expected, Leila frowned and linked her arm with his. Caesar, I'll go in with Raphael. I looked at her calmly. In that instant, I made my decision. I nodded peacefully and took a step back, putting distance between us. That step represented my withdrawal from this relationship. My generosity clearly caught Leila off guard. A flash of surprise crossed her eyes, but in the end, she said nothing. Holding Raphael's arm, she turned and walked into the haunted house. The classmates exchanged glances. The looks they gave me were filled with sympathy and confusion. A close friend walked over, draped an arm around my shoulder, and told me not to overthink it. I smiled and nodded to everyone before turning away. When I reached the carnival entrance, I instinctively touched the protective talisman hanging around my neck. When I was 10 years old, I became seriously ill and had to recover at home for a long time. After Leila found out, she begged her parents to take her to the temple. She put all of her New Year's money into the donation box. Then she sincerely knelt before the Buddha and kowtowed 99 times. That was how she obtained this talisman. Later, she clumsily tied it around my neck and repeatedly told me never to take it off. She said it would keep me safe, and I believed her. I wore it from the age of 10 until 18. I never took it off, not even when showering. But now, I could no longer find a reason to keep wearing it. I snapped the red cord, hung the talisman on a tree branch, and walked away. The moment I stepped through my front door, a message from Leila arrived. Caesar, where are you? Why didn't you wait and come home with me? You're not angry because I accompanied Raphael, are you? I already told you. Raphael is timid. If you're always getting jealous over nothing like this, then when we get into South University, I won't even dare tell people you're my boyfriend. Who would want a boyfriend who's so petty? I didn't reply. Thinking back over the past year, I found it somewhat amusing. I had only asked her once to keep her distance from Raphael. How had that become getting jealous over nothing? Or was it because when it came to the person she truly cared about, even one complaint was too many? Sitting in front of my computer, I opened the university application website, looking at the countdown showing only 2 hours left before the deadline. I changed my application from South University to Tsinghua University without the slightest hesitation. South University had once been our promise. It had been a beautiful promise. She had described us walking hand in hand across the campus. She had described us sitting together on a stone bench in autumn, leaning against each other while watching the parasol leaves fall. She had described us holding hands in the snow during winter, sharing a cup of milk tea. But hadn't she already done all those things with Raphael? If I wasn't her one and only, then I would rather have none of it. After confirming that my application had been submitted correctly, I began sorting through all the gifts Leila had given me over the years. On my desk sat a photograph of her smiling brightly. After our middle school entrance exams, she had personally placed it there. She said that once we entered high school, there would be many beautiful girls around me. She forbade me from looking at them. She said I could only look at her from morning until night. And I really had done exactly that for 3 years. Now, I didn't want to look anymore. Into the box it went. Inside a drawer sat a jar containing 99 paper stars she had folded for me. After opening them, I found that every single star contained a wish, and every wish was about me. But now, she probably couldn't even remember those 99 wishes anymore. Into the box they went. The wall beside my bed was covered with photographs of us from childhood to the present. From innocence to adolescence. From our unsteady first steps to standing tall. Those photographs documented the 18 years we had known each other, but that was all they were now. 18 years. I tore them down one by one and threw them into the box. Opening my wardrobe, I saw the handmade knitted hat sitting on the top shelf. During the winter vacation of our second year of high school, after learning how to knit from her mother, she had spent the entire holiday making it for me. The stitches were uneven. The hat looked awkward when worn, yet I wore it every year, even when classmates laughed at me and said it was ugly. I never stopped wearing it. Back then, I believed every stitch represented her effort and affection. I couldn't bear to let that devotion go to waste. But now, looking at the hat again, it really was ugly. Into the box it went. The box quickly filled up. I took out some packing tape and sealed it shut. Along with it, I sealed away every memory of her from the past 18 years. Chapter 3. The familiar sound of laughter and conversation drifted up from outside. I lifted a corner of the curtain and looked down. Under the streetlight, a boy and a girl were chatting happily. As the girl waved goodbye, the boy called out to her. I didn't know what he said. The girl's face immediately turned red. Guiltily, she glanced up toward my bedroom window. Then she nodded at the boy. The boy stepped forward and pulled her firmly into his arms. As I watched them share a sweet kiss beneath the streetlight, I felt no pain at all. Only a dull sense of suffocation lingered in my chest. Almost there. Soon, I wouldn't feel anything anymore. After they parted, Raphael smiled and waved goodbye to Leila. With her head lowered, Leila hurried toward home. Our families lived in neighboring villas. Since our relationship had always been close, the dividing wall between the properties had been removed long ago. She lingered outside her front door for quite a while. In the end, she walked over and knocked on my door. I heard my parents' bedroom door open. Standing in the hallway, I shook my head at my mother. She looked at me in confusion for a moment but didn't go to answer the door. Eventually, the knocking stopped. My mother took my hand and asked softly, "That was Leila, wasn't it? Son, why didn't you open the door for her?" I smiled faintly at her. "Mom, she just finished kissing her boyfriend." My mother's expression froze. She didn't want to believe it, but she also knew that I never lied, so she had no choice but to believe me. My father came out, pulling a jacket over his shoulders. He walked straight downstairs, sat on the couch, and lit a cigarette. I knew it was time to explain everything to them. The longer it dragged on, the deeper the misunderstanding would become. Taking my mother's hand, I followed her downstairs and told them everything. After hearing my story, my mother held my hand with concern. "Son, Tsinghua is in the north. Will you be able to adapt to the climate there?" I patted the back of her hand reassuringly. "Mom, I'm a grown man. What's there to worry about?" My father crushed out his cigarette and snorted heavily. "No, we can't just let this go. I'm going to talk to her parents right now and demand an explanation." I stopped him. "Dad, a girl has every right to choose who she wants. They're not married to me. Why shouldn't she be allowed to choose someone else?" My father's eyes widened. "How is that the same? It was her family that suggested the childhood engagement in the first place." I smiled. "Dad, what era are we living in now? Who still believes in arranged marriages?" After finally calming my parents down, I told them what I truly thought. "Mom, Dad, this is where things end between Leila and me. Honestly, it's better for problems to show up now than after marriage, and there's no need to ask her parents for an explanation. Let's just treat the childhood engagement as a joke." My mother sighed. "I suppose that's all we can do." My father was still grumbling under his breath, but there was no other choice. After returning to my room, I picked up my phone. I discovered that Leila had sent me a message 10 minutes earlier. "Caesar, if you're not home, where did you go?" I was about to delete it when another message arrived. "Caesar, you've really gotten bold lately. You don't even bother replying to my messages now." "Fine, if you've got so much backbone, then don't reply. Don't talk to me either. Let's see who gives in first." She wanted to turn this into a contest of endurance. That suited me perfectly. Sure enough, during the next half-month, Leila didn't send a single message or make a single phone call. I didn't contact her either. In fact, I rarely even left the house. Every day, I stayed home reading university textbooks I had bought online. The day my admission letter arrived, our class monitor, Juliana, posted a notice in the group chat. "At 6 p.m. tonight, we'll be holding the Teachers' Appreciation Banquet in the Peony Hall of the Global Hotel. Everyone, please arrive on time." The classmates immediately replied, "Received. Got it. See you tonight." When I didn't respond for a long time, Juliana sent me a private message and specifically asked me to attend. As Leila's best friend, she undoubtedly knew that Leila and I had fallen out. Truthfully, I didn't want to go, but remembering how well our homeroom teacher, Mr. Wang, had treated me, I reluctantly agreed. After receiving my confirmation, Juliana sent me a smiling emoji. Then she said nothing more. She was probably reporting the news to Leila. Chapter 4. At exactly 6 o'clock that evening, I arrived outside the private dining room. My hand had just touched the doorknob when I suddenly heard my name. "Leila, how long are you planning to keep this Cold War with Caesar going?" "Juliana, this time I'm definitely going to make him give in first and apologize. Only then will I consider whether I want to forgive him." "But aren't you afraid someone else might steal Caesar away? He's outstanding, his family is well off, and plenty of girls are interested in him." Leila laughed. "Impossible. Our families arranged our marriage a long time ago. We'll get married after we graduate from university. As for him, he's never interested in any girl except me." Hearing how certain she sounded, Juliana stopped trying to persuade her. "Then tell me this, what exactly do you feel for Raphael?" "I have a feeling he's in your heart." I wanted to hear her answer too. The room suddenly fell silent. After a long pause, Leila sighed. "So what if he is in my heart? In the end, he and I belong to two different worlds. There will never be a future for us." When I heard that answer, I felt neither sadness nor anger. Instead, I almost laughed. The way she said it made it sound as if the whole world had somehow wronged her. Footsteps approached from behind. Our homeroom teacher, Mr. Wang, patted me on the shoulder. "Caesar, Why aren't you going in? Standing behind him was Raphael. The moment he saw me, he shrank back and lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. I smiled at Mr. Wang. I was waiting for you, teacher. As I spoke, I pushed open the door and let him enter first. After Mr. Wang went inside, I stepped into the room before Raphael could. The moment Leila saw me, her eyes lit up. But then she seemed to remember that we were still giving each other the silent treatment. She let out a cold snort and deliberately looked past me toward Raphael behind me. She waved at him. Raphael, come sit beside me. Excitement immediately appeared on Raphael's face. He walked around me and sat on Leila's left. Juliana, who was sitting on Leila's right, stood up as if intending to offer me her seat. I didn't even look at her. Instead, I walked straight toward the friends I was closest to. Leila's expression darkened. Her eyes remained fixed on me. After Mr. Wang finished offering his blessings and words of encouragement, everyone began eating. Leila, sitting across from me, seemed determined to provoke me. One moment she was serving food onto Raphael's plate. The next, she was peeling shrimp for him. Every now and then, she would even act spoiled and ask Raphael to help her reach dishes that were too far away. Watching them feed each other, the classmates cast meaningful glances in my direction. I quietly continued eating without any reaction. Seeing the awkward atmosphere, Mr. Wang took the initiative to change the subject. Leila, you and Raphael are both attending South University. You'll have plenty of time to show off your romance in the future. No need to shower everyone with PDA tonight. It was meant as a joke, but Leila's expression immediately changed. She didn't look at Mr. Wang. Instead, she turned toward Raphael. You enrolled at South University too? Raphael smiled and nodded. Leila, I think South University's finance program suits me better. I had to struggle to keep myself from laughing. Leila chose finance because her family had connections and resources that could help her succeed. But what did Raphael have? Leila's expression became complicated. It was hard to tell whether she felt touched or regretful. You scored so highly on the exams. Don't you think that's a waste? Raphael shook his head firmly. For you, anything is worth it. The expressions around the table instantly became much more interesting. Some classmates sneaked glances at me. Some looked at Raphael with disdain. Others studied Leila carefully. Mr. Wang coughed and interrupted their romantic exchange. Still, Caesar made a great choice this time. Tsinghua University's Computer Science Department. Excellent school. Excellent major. The sound of chopsticks hitting the floor was unusually loud. Leila stared at me in shock. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. I ignored her completely and raised my glass toward Mr. Wang. It's all thanks to your guidance, Teacher Gao. I emptied the glass in one gulp, then nodded to everyone present. Enjoy your meal, everyone. I have something to take care of, so I'll be leaving first. With that, I turned and walked out of the room. Behind me came hurried footsteps. Caesar, why didn't you apply to South University? Wasn't that our plan all along? Chapter 5. I didn't look back and quickly headed toward the elevator. Just as I reached the elevator doors, someone grabbed my hand tightly. When I turned around, I saw that Leila's face was deathly pale. She had bitten her lower lip so hard that it was bleeding. She tilted her head up, her eyes filled with pleading and confusion. I had never seen Leila like this before. Humble, fragile, as if she would shatter at the slightest touch. Yet I felt no sympathy or heartache, only deep irritation. Let go. Leila stubbornly met my gaze and tightened her grip even further. Tears slid silently down her pale cheeks. Caesar, why did you lie to me? We agreed we'd go to South University together, study finance together, and spend 4 years together. Why did you change your mind without telling me? What am I supposed to do now? I was about to ask whether she didn't find this conversation awkward at all. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed Raphael standing not far away. His entire body was trembling. He looked as though he were about to fall apart. Leila, maybe you should go check on your boyfriend. I'm afraid he might be so heartbroken that he'll drop dead. Following my gaze, Leila also saw Raphael. Her expression instantly turned cold and fierce. Didn't I tell you not to follow me? Why did you come out here? Raphael lowered his head like a frightened quail. His shoulders shook continuously. I truly didn't understand. He was a grown man. What was the point of constantly acting weak and helpless? But Leila liked it, and I had nothing to say about that. After all, whatever kind of person he was had nothing to do with me. I didn't want to waste another second dealing with this pair of disasters. I reached out and pried Leila's fingers off mine one by one. She didn't want to let go, but the difference in our strength left her powerless. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped inside. Leila tried to follow me. I raised my hand and blocked her. Leila, if you keep harassing me, don't blame me for telling your parents about all the wonderful things you've been doing. You should remember that there are surveillance cameras at the front gate. The moment she heard those words, she froze. Her eyes filled with pain and regret. She knew exactly what I meant, and she knew that I had seen her kissing Raphael outside our homes. The elevator doors slowly closed. Leila's sobbing voice echoed inside. Caesar, I was wrong. I couldn't hear the rest, but it didn't matter anymore. After returning home, I immediately carried the box over to Leila's house. Her father opened the door. Seeing that I was alone, he scratched his head in confusion. Caesar, why are you by yourself? Where's Leila? I smiled politely but didn't answer his question. Uncle, I'm here to return this to her. As I spoke, I handed him the box. Without opening it, he accepted the box and reminded me. Caesar, once you two start university, you have to help me take good care of Leila. As men, we should treat our future wives well. I rolled my eyes internally, though I kept smiling. Of course, Uncle, I'll head back now. After returning home, I grabbed the luggage I had already packed and left. My parents drove me to the airport. While we waited for boarding, my mother held my hand reluctantly. Son, do you really have to leave this early? There's still another month before school starts. I forced out a smile that looked worse than crying. Mom, just thinking about how Leila is going to cling to me and refuse to let go makes it impossible for me to stay another day. I'm going to City first to get familiar with the environment. You and Dad will have to hold down the fort here. My father shot me an annoyed look. You brat gets to run away. What about your mother and me? I shook my head. She wouldn't dare do anything to you two. If she asks where I am, just tell her you don't know. The moment I finished speaking, my phone rang. It was Leila. After I hung up, she immediately called again. I frowned and blocked her number. When the calls stopped going through, she switched to bombarding me with messages. Caesar, can you give me a chance to explain? I'm standing outside your house. If you won't come see me, then I'm not leaving. Then don't leave. I casually blocked her on WeChat as well. Soon it was time to board. After saying goodbye to my parents, I walked toward the boarding gate. For the first time in a long while, I felt completely free. Chapter 6. Leila sat in front of my house. Her head was buried deeply between her knees. Juliana stayed beside her. Raphael stood near the gate, constantly peering inside. Leila, don't do this to yourself. You and Caesar have been together for so many years. He'll definitely forgive you. It was as though Leila had been swallowed whole by overwhelming pain. She had never imagined a future without Caesar. As for Raphael, she had only pitied him, sympathized with him, enjoyed the admiration and devotion he showed her, and perhaps there had been a tiny trace of affection mixed in, a trace so small it was almost insignificant. The enormous gap in their backgrounds and upbringing meant that she and Raphael had very little in common. They were never truly compatible. In Leila's eyes, Raphael had been little more than a tool to provoke Caesar, a way to remind Caesar that she was desirable too, a way to make him cherish her more. But this time, she had pushed things too far. Even now, she couldn't understand it. Why had she agreed to Raphael's request for a hug that night outside their homes? Was it because she pitied him? Or because she wanted to experience the thrill of crossing a line? What she regretted even more was why she hadn't pushed him away when he suddenly kissed her. But the reasons no longer mattered. The fact that Caesar had seen the outcome was devastating enough. She didn't know whether he would forgive her this time. Not a single word of Juliana's comfort reached her ears. There was only one thought left in her mind. She needed to see Caesar. She needed to clear up the misunderstanding. After an unknown amount of time, she slowly raised her head. When she saw Raphael standing by the gate, anger flared inside her. Why was he still here? What if Caesar suddenly came out and saw him? How would she explain that? At this moment, in Leila's eyes, Raphael's usual helplessness and fragility were completely worthless. In fact, they only made her feel more disgusted. She pulled the ring off her ring finger. Then she hurled it at Raphael with all her strength. Take your cheap junk and get out of here. The ring struck Raphael, and shattered his heart as well. The love he thought he had found was nothing more than trash that Leila could throw away without hesitation. Picking up the ring, Raphael staggered away. Behind him came Leila's furious voice. Don't ever let me see you again. Otherwise, I have plenty of ways to make sure you never even get to attend university. Juliana watched Raphael with pity. She wanted to tell him that love crossing class boundaries only existed in movies. If he truly believed movies could become reality, then he deserved every wound he received. Leila, there aren't any lights on in Caesar's house. He probably isn't home. Let's go back for now. We can come back tomorrow morning and wait for him. Wrapping her arms around herself, Leila gently shook her head. I'm not leaving. I have to see him today. The gate slowly opened. When she saw Caesar's family car driving in, Leila immediately jumped to her feet. But only Caesar's parents stepped out. Caesar's father and mother. No Caesar. Leila hurried over and grabbed Caesar's mother's hand. Auntie, where's Caesar's brother? When she was 16 and learned about their engagement, she had stopped calling Caesar brother. Back then, she had said that since she was destined to become his wife someday, she didn't want to call him brother anymore. But now she was trying to use their shared history to soften Caesar's mother's heart. Caesar's father didn't even look at her. He walked straight into the house. Caesar's mother gently removed Leila's hand. Her voice was distant and calm. Child, let it go. Go home. Leila stood there blankly. Then, just as Caesar's mother was about to enter the house, she shouted, I'm not going home. If Caesar won't see me today, then I'm not leaving. Caesar's mother sighed. Then she closed the door. Leila sat down on the steps. Juliana went to her house, brought back a jacket, and draped it over her shoulders. In the middle of the night, the front door of Caesar's house finally opened. Leila instantly stood up, perhaps because she had been sitting for too long. Her vision darkened. Her body swayed. She nearly collapsed. Caesar's mother looked at her with pity. Child, stop waiting. Caesar has already gone to City A. His flight landed tonight. Leila's entire body began trembling uncontrollably. Auntie, you're not lying to me, are you? Caesar's mother shook her head. If I came out here to tell you, then I have no reason to lie. Leila grabbed her hand and pleaded desperately. Auntie, please tell me where Caesar is staying. I'll go find him right now. Caesar's mother sighed once more. He left precisely because he was afraid you'd come looking for him. So where he's staying, even we don't know. Chapter 7. Leila returned home looking completely lost. Her father had no idea what had happened. Seeing that she had come back in the middle of the night with Juliana beside her, he asked in confusion, Daughter, did Caesar drive you home? Leila acted as if she hadn't heard him. She walked straight toward the stairs. Juliana greeted him politely. Uncle, we came back on our own. Leila's father frowned. What was Caesar thinking? It's so late. Why didn't he bring you girls home? Then he slapped his forehead. Oh, right, daughter. Caesar dropped off a box this afternoon. Leila stopped in her tracks, following the direction her father pointed. She looked over numbly. The moment she saw the box, life seemed to return to her eyes. She hurried over, picked it up, and carried it to her bedroom. Sitting on her bed, Leila opened the box. The first thing she saw was a photograph of herself and Caesar. It had been torn cleanly in half. The jar of stars she had folded for him sat quietly inside. The hat she had knitted with her own hands had been tossed carelessly into a corner of the box. At that moment, she completely broke down. She burst into tears. Juliana didn't know how to comfort her. All she could do was stay by her side in silence, looking at all these objects filled with memories, destroyed, returned untouched, sent back without a single word. She understood. There was no future left for Caesar and Leila. At some point, she fell asleep. She couldn't even remember when. When she woke up, Leila was no longer beside her. Immediately, she called Leila's phone. The call wouldn't go through. After a long while, a message finally arrived. I'm going to City A to find Caesar. Juliana stared at the message and smiled bitterly. City A was enormous, without even a specific address. How was Leila supposed to find him? But as a best friend, she had already done everything she could. She had advised her. She had accompanied her. And perhaps that was all she could ever do. Chapter 8. The next time I saw Leila was on the day school started. During that month, I had explored almost every corner of City A. My mother had called several times during that period to tell me that Leila had come looking for me and warned me to be careful. I had simply curled my lips in disdain. City A was enormous. If she could actually find me here, that would be seriously impressive. I didn't take it seriously at all. Every day, I wandered through the streets and alleys of City A, enjoying myself immensely. To be fair, City A truly deserved its reputation as the capital. Its cultural heritage was rich, and there were endless options for food, entertainment, and sightseeing. You could find delicacies from every region of the country there. As someone from the South, aside from struggling to adapt to the lightning-fast pace of life, everything else was great. On registration day, I happily carried my admission letter to Tsinghua University. I had barely reached the entrance when someone blocked my path. Fortunately, it was daytime. If it had been nighttime, I probably would have screamed. Ghost. The woman had disheveled hair. Her face was pale. The dark circles beneath her eyes were so heavy that they looked like thick smoky makeup. A sour odor surrounded her. Caesar, I finally found you. The voice sounded vaguely familiar. I asked cautiously. Leila. The woman nodded. Looking at her miserable appearance, I felt both speechless and helpless. Go take a shower first, and change into some clean clothes. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I'll remove you from my blacklist in a minute. Leila still looked unconvinced. Caesar, unblock me right now. I want to watch you do it. I really didn't want to argue with her in front of the university gates. Taking out my phone, I removed her from my blocked contacts right in front of her. A faint smile appeared on Leila's lips, though honestly, it looked worse than crying. Caesar, wait for me. I'll go shower and change immediately. I promise I won't embarrass you in front of your classmates. I rolled my eyes. So that was what she was worried about. Unfortunately, she wasn't anyone important to me anymore. Why would I feel embarrassed because of her? After finishing registration, I sat in a milk tea shop near the campus entrance and waited for Leila. I was staring absent-mindedly out the window when a girl's bell-like laughter sounded beside me. Turning around, I saw 3 girls smiling at me. One of them, a tall girl, walked over. Pointing at the seat across from me, she asked, "Handsome, is anyone sitting here?" I glanced around the nearly empty milk tea shop and shook my head. After sitting down, she studied me for a moment. "You're a freshman at Tsinghua too, right?" I looked at her in surprise. "How could you tell?" The girl pointed toward the students buying drinks and immediately leaving. Tsinghua students are either in class or on their way to class. Very few people sit around in a milk tea shop and drink slowly. So that was her reasoning. I nodded in admiration. "Senior, you're pretty observant." She waved her hand dismissively. "Don't call me senior. I'm a freshman too. It's just that my family lives nearby. When I was little, I came to Tsinghua all the time, so I know this place like the back of my hand." A local resident. No wonder. "Handsome. Let's exchange contact information." Making friends with a local was never a bad idea. I took out my phone and added her. While entering her contact information, I asked her name. She said her name was Violet, a poetic and elegant name. After adding each other, she raised an eyebrow toward the other 2 girls in the distance. "A bet is a bet. Go buy the milk tea." I laughed helplessly. So I had been the subject of a wager. Violet turned out to be a pretty decent person. After winning 2 cups of milk tea, she generously shared one with me. As we drank, we chatted. It turned out she was also a freshman in the computer science department. She told me about the best places to eat and the most interesting places to visit in City A. Listening to her list them one after another, I finally realized something. For the past month, I had thought I had explored all of City A, but in reality, I had only scratched the surface. I hadn't even begun to discover its true charm. Chapter 9. Violet and I were having a great conversation. Then, like a ghost appearing out of nowhere, Leila suddenly showed up behind Violet. Seeing the change in my expression, Violet turned around and looked at the still damp-haired Leila. As their eyes met, both girls seemed momentarily stunned by each other's beauty. Violet pointed at Leila. "Caesar, just a friend, not wanting any unnecessary trouble." I nodded. Violet stood up. "Then I'll get going. You two talk." With that, she stretched her long legs and headed toward the door. Noticing that my eyes were following Violet's legs, Leila pouted pitifully. Only after Violet disappeared through the entrance did I look away. "Are they really that nice to look at?" Jealousy seeped into her voice. I nodded. "They really are." That was the last straw. "Caesar, can you look at me instead? I've spent an entire month looking for you. I even missed registration at South University." I glanced at her helplessly. "Why did you come looking for me?" Leila lowered her head and spoke softly. "Caesar, I'm not asking you to forgive me, but I hope you'll give me a chance to win you back." So she was still dreaming. I shook my head firmly. "Leila, be realistic. It's over between us." Leila grabbed my hand anxiously. "No, it's not over. We've known each other since childhood. We've spent more than 10 years together. You can't erase all of that just because you say it's over." Looking at her emotional state, I felt utterly exhausted. This version of her, clingy, desperate, unwilling to let go, felt like a stranger. "Leila, it really is over. You need to accept reality." She looked at me with pain in her eyes. Why can't you forgive me just once?" Since she refused to let go, I decided to say everything openly. "You keep saying your feelings for Raphael came from sympathy, but everything you did with him looked exactly like what a real couple would do. He gave you a ring, and you accepted it. Don't tell me you didn't understand what wearing a ring on your ring finger means. You spent your entire senior year attached to him. How much time did you actually leave for me, your boyfriend? He asked for a hug. You gave him one. He kissed you, and you didn't reject him. You never spoke the word love, but under the name of friendship, you did everything lovers do. Leila, when you stepped outside our relationship and enjoyed the excitement and novelty he brought you, you should have known that your choices would have consequences." Leila left in tears. Before leaving, she told me she would never give up. She said she would definitely win me back. I couldn't understand it. There were mountains and rivers separating us now. How exactly was she planning to pursue me? But a week later, when my mother called me, I finally understood. She told me that Leila had decided to repeat her final year of high school. She was going to take the college entrance exams again and apply to Tsinghua University. After hearing that, I merely smiled. I had no right to stop her. How she chose to live her life and which university she wanted to attend were her own decisions. I had no authority to interfere. Chapter 10. When I returned home for winter break, I brought Violet with me. Fate really works in mysterious ways. After our first meeting, we discovered that we were both freshmen in the computer science department. What neither of us expected was that we were also in the same class. Thanks to the excellent first impression we had of each other, we quickly became close. Whenever our studies weren't too demanding, Violet would take me through every alleyway in City A and introduce me to countless local delicacies. Similar family backgrounds, compatible personalities, shared values and outlooks on life. All of it allowed our relationship to develop naturally. Before long, we officially started dating. I have always believed that love doesn't need to be dramatic enough to move heaven and earth. Compatibility and mutual understanding are far more important. My parents were delighted when I brought my girlfriend home. After getting to know her, they became very fond of Violet's straightforward, generous, and genuine personality. Somehow, Leila learned about it. She spent an entire day sitting in my house. She barely spoke. Instead, she stared at Violet and me with cold eyes. Whenever we showed even the slightest bit of affection, she would immediately rush over. My mother eventually couldn't tolerate it anymore. She called Leila's father, who finally came and took her away. For the rest of the vacation, I never saw Leila again. It wasn't until our high school reunion that I learned something surprising. Raphael had actually repeated his final year of high school alongside Leila. I hadn't expected him to be so devoted, but Leila was no longer the same person she used to be. Not only did she completely ignore Raphael, but when he couldn't afford the tuition for another year of study and asked her for help, she refused him outright. Raphael's family simply couldn't bear the financial burden of another year of school. In the end, he had no choice but to leave and study at home. After returning to City A, I found myself constantly on edge. When Violet asked me what was wrong, I told her my concern. I was genuinely afraid that Leila might get into Tsinghua that year. If she did, I would never have a moment of peace. Violet, however, wasn't worried at all. She told me to relax. According to her, Tsinghua wasn't that easy to get into. In June, my mother called. Leila had failed her entrance exams. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. I later heard that she wanted to repeat the year again, but her father forcibly sent her overseas instead. As for Raphael, I only heard occasional updates through former classmates. While taking care of his family, he continued studying and still clung to the fantasy that he and Leila would one day be together. As a result, his exam performance was poor. His score barely reached the cutoff for a first-year university. I didn't know whether I should call him foolish or feel sorry for him. Once people become trapped in unrealistic fantasies, misfortune usually follows. His academic record had always been excellent, yet for the sake of a dream that was never going to come true, he wasted an entire year and sacrificed his future. Perhaps that was his consequence. After that, I didn't hear anything about either of them for a very long time. Not until the day Violet and I got married. Among the wedding guests, I saw Leila again. After returning from overseas, she had taken over her family's company. Over the years, we had almost no contact. After the wedding ceremony ended, she approached me, standing by the entrance and looking at the swing in the yard. Her eyes filled with memories of the past. "Caesar, do you remember when we were kids? You used to push me on that swing every day." I silently nodded. A trace of melancholy appeared in her eyes. If I hadn't done something so stupid back then, would we be married now? I looked at my wife, Violet, who was standing nearby, smiling at me while holding my mother's arm. Then I gently shook my head. There are no what-ifs. People only dwell on the past when they're unhappy with the present. But I've been happy all these years. So in all this time, I never once thought about you. Leila left, quietly, without making a sound. Violet and I exchanged a smile. Life is often that simple. There's no need to trouble yourself over people and things that no longer matter. And if they insist on appearing in your life again, sometimes the best response is simply to ignore them.